Hello everyone, how you doing? And welcome back to Skye and Evan in the morning. And today we're gonna be talking about The Exorcist, the 1973 horror classic. Um, yeah, I don't know. Well, I enjoyed it. Evan, what did you think of The Exorcist? As you're telling me you've watched it like twice before, so like third watch.
Yeah, I believe so. I don't know if I'd seen this once before on my own. I know I watched it in one there was actually a horror cinema class that I took at the community college I went to for 2 years, and it's so funny. It was actually a really cool class. We only watched and only discussed and wrote about horror movies, and this was one of them. And I know I watched it with my brother. It's like it's a movie that I just haven't felt compelled to like rewatch a bunch, but I this rewatch was different for me. I looked at it differently, and I think part of it is I you go into a certain movie, like especially a horror movie with like preconceived notions. You imagine you're going to get a scary experience, but the funny thing about The Exorcist is that's not how like horror is generated. Like the scene that feels kind of like that is the attic when she goes up with a candle and then like
Mm,
the candle like explodes into flame and it's like ah!
yeah.
That's like a spooky
Yeah,
sequence,
that's
but there's
the
not a lot
Well, it's
of that
interesting.
in
I
this
messaged
movie.
you while I was watching. It's just like there's not a lot of like fluff with this movie, you know? Like how do you expect from like a horror movie to have like these extended sequences of like characters not doing anything and then boom, jump scare or like setting up the big bad.
Exactly.
But it's like everything in this movie feels purposeful. Um I don't know. It was really interesting because I was like, it doesn't feel like a modern horror movie. It feels like a horror movie. And I mean, what is it? Was it Thomas Flight that made the video essay that we mentioned that talks about this? How like movies
Yeah.
are not made the same. Um, like
Well,
movies nowadays, I think they try to like keep your attention in a way of like having jump scares every like 5 minutes and everything. Like like compare this to Smile. You know what I mean? Like these are completely
exactly.
different like experiences. Like one is like actually just like telling a story. The other's trying to keep you engaged throughout the entire runtime. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Like constant engagement or
Yeah.
constant scares versus like more quiet. And there's because there are extensive sequences in this. Like, I think you and I both watched the director's cut. And from what I'm understanding, there's a little more like dead air in the director's cut, which I like. But there are a lot of scenes of characters just like walking home or walking
Yeah.
to a different area or like waiting for a while to meet people. I love sequences that almost feel noir in this movie, like when the homicide detective meets Karis, and then when like she's waiting on the bridge after Reagan like hits her, and then like is waiting for Karis and like meets him for the first time. There's so many sequences where characters are just kind of like waiting or walking, and it takes its time. It doesn't rely on gore and jump
Yeah.
scares and stuff like that. It's a more introspective horror movie.
Which is very interesting because the effects they have for the demon inside Reagan are fucking phenomenal.
Yes, and the oh my god, there is a shot. I don't want to like say how they did it without looking it up again, but there is a shot with the hypnotist. Let me see if I can get to it. Where like they do all these tests and none of them are working, and then they're like, okay, we'll try to take you to like a hypnotist or a psychiatrist, and then he tries to like see if there's like a split personality thing going on, and then she attacks him and like grabs on, and then there's this shot of him like falling down and it like tracks as he falls. That shot was done before the Steadicam existed. And they had to like make a rig that like the camera fell down with him. That type of a shot would be easier nowadays, but it's funny when you look up some of the effects, like the bed shaking, and obviously at the
Mm.
end, like the levitation. There's all these tricks they had to use because like It's
Well,
back in 1973 when
yeah.
you had to innovate.
Well, that's what's interesting when you see these movies from like 73. You're like, it's kind of why you can't really replicate that kind of thing with like copying the style, is because there was a level of like having to achieve something that has never happened before in cinema, and over time it just became
Yeah.
easier to achieve these things, you know? Like, I don't know, like everything in modern horror movies they can do so easily with just like a lot of computer generated stuff and everything. At the time they had to like innovate to make a horror movie this good, and it pays off. I don't know, there's something authentic about it. I'm not to be like a
Well,
purist that's just like, oh, old movies are, this isn't even like, some of my favorite horror movies are, from the like the past 10 years. But it is interesting to think about, like, because The Exorcist kind of spawned an entire like genre of horror. So,
well,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. There's so many movies that are exorcism based, so many sequels from this. I've actually heard the third movie is pretty good. The guy who wrote it, I think, directed and wrote it. I could be mistaken about that, but like I've heard the third movie is actually a pretty good film. But so many have tried, and they tried again recently with Exorcist Believer, I think it was called, and then they had they were going to bring Mike Flanagan on, I think, for the sequel to save that, and then they just dropped the trilogy as a whole. But I, I would imagine that most exorcism movies which fail are ones that rely on the girl, as it were. And
Mm.
that's the funny thing about this movie is like it's Chris, I believe is the
Yeah.
mother's name,
Yeah, she's
Chris
called
McNeil. Yeah,
Chris. Yeah.
she is definitely the main character of this movie.
Yeah.
It's not about her. I don't know if that's a quote from Ebert, but someone said like they make it a movie about the girl and it's not about her. It's about him. It's about Karis as well. The adults are the main character of this movie. The Reagan's just like possessed, and that the villain happens to be inside of her and possessing her and trying to kill her. But the main characters and the main conflict come
Yeah,
from
there are
the
Chris and Damien,
grown-ups.
yeah, for
And
sure. It's
yeah.
very interesting, and I mean I'm glad we got into it like kind of naturally. But I was trying to understand like how like what this movie's trying to say, because I've seen a few different theories and I'm just intrigued by this movie. Like, because it focuses so much on like character development for Chris and Damien Karras so much that I don't know if it's just like what it is trying to say about like humanity. Like with like Chris, maybe it's like her not being able to deal with her daughter having a mental illness. That's supposed to be like the metaphor, you know what I mean? Especially because of the way the movie talks about psychiatrists as if they're like the devil. It's so funny. They're always like
Well, yeah,
really
they
avert, like it has to be the last option and everything, because they don't want to admit that their child has like a mental illness, especially like with the 70s. I understand how like big of a deal that would have been.
yeah,
Like
it was
nowadays
seen
it's
as more
easier.
taboo. They use the
Yeah.
word shrink, and it's like it's funny that that's like relegated, like you said, the last resort. Like
Yeah.
we can't do that. We
Yeah, they
can't put
literally
her
said
in an
like, "Oh,
institution.
a good psychiatrist would, exhaust all other options." Like, you're just like wanting to do brain surgery on this girl
Yeah,
just to
and I'm
avoid
sure
going to a psychiatrist. It's actually hilarious.
And I'm sure doctors are like competitive like that, especially when you have like all the money to spend on your daughter. Like it's like,
Yeah,
we could more treatment would help or more pills would help, and like versus like deferring to someone else. I don't know.
I hadn't even
One
thought
way or
of that, but it
another,
is
it's
actually kind of funny how the movie's kind of facilitated by the fact that Chris is rich, a rich movie actress. Because I forgot how bad in America it is to do all these um,
yeah. No,
exams and fucking everything. So yeah.
I'm pretty sure that ties in, and like like because the doctors just keep coming and coming.
Yeah.
Another interesting element of the movie is all of that. Like there's an extensive portion of this film shown to like testing Reagan and
Hmm.
attempting treatment, and it's pretty eerie. You were asking like the point, and what I've always drawn away from this movie, especially with Karis, is like I see this as a crisis of faith movie, which is
Hmm.
funny because there's this perception of this movie being like evil or like cursed, and there was all this like scare around when it came out that it was going to like scar people when they watched in theaters. And it's like it is a movie about a man who just he says it in the bar, like, I think I've lost my faith. And he he's a priest and all, but like he has his own troubles. And then he goes through the death of his mother, and he part of like processing that grief is this. And it's like I feel like this is like the redemption arc for him, and him gaining more faith because he has to be faithful in the third act when the exorcist shows up. And he's skeptical before, even when he recommends it to the church. And I think that's like the film. I think that's part of the point
Mm-hmm.
is, for one, like skepticism, like with all the tests that they run. And she has to indulge in it as well. She has to entertain the idea that an exorcism could help, but she just says like nothing else, nothing you could do could make it worse.
Yeah.
So that's always been my
Mm-hmm.
takeaway from the film. And
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a more hopeful outlook than what I've heard. I've heard people say that it's a movie that is just like the horror kind of comes from how everything like is like destroyed in this movie. You know what I mean? Like, this very sad thinking of like Karis, like he dies at the end to protect this kid, and they kill Marin, the other priest, and like Chris is scarred and everything sucks basically by the end, and everyone is kind of fucked, and it's just like that's what the devil did. He just wanted to prove that there is no God to like protect them and everything like that, which I think is an interesting way of looking at it, but I'm not sure if it's
I
how I see it.
I'm not on that track. And I don't know if I mentioned that like, so we watched the director's cut, and from what I'm
Mm-hmm.
understanding, the director's cut like adds a little bit of material at the end. I think in the theatrical they just drive away, but I think the ending is still the same. There is a wrap up. I see the ending as pretty optimistic,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. And like the note that like she says like she doesn't remember any of it, and she's like, well, that's good. And it's I they do save the girl at the end, and he dies. They both die. Like the exorcism kills them, but I I see it. I forgot about the last rites moment too. That Karis was alive. I thought he was just dead then and there, but like you can see like a little bit of him is holding on, and then he
Yeah, his you can see his hand
dies
moving
there.
and holding the priest's
Yeah,
hand. What's his name? Dyer. Yeah.
yeah. That moment was so cool, and I love that you get that last moment with him and his faith. Like he, you know, in his dying moments, he does believe, and that it is him still. So
Yeah.
I
I mean, there is an interesting thing about like he transfers the demon inside himself to save the girl, but he still has some level of control, and so he uses that last act to like rid the world of that evil. It's an interesting. I like that, especially like as you said, like as a crisis of faith, him regaining his faith and being asked like, do you want to take your confession before you die? It's like him understanding that he did something good for God, like that he did God's bidding, I guess, in that sense. It's an interesting um moment that I really like.
yeah. You were mentioning that you kind of want to like watch video essays on this movie and like research it and like look into it to like
Mm-hmm.
understand it more. Have you heard of Mark Kermode?
Don't think so.
He is a film critic. It's interesting. He's like one of my favorite like more scholarly like film critics, if you know what I mean, or like writes their own stuff, like writes their own books and stuff like that. The Exorcist is his like unambiguous all-time favorite film. If you like ask him like what's your favorite film, he just say The Exorcist.
Okay.
And he's watched it so many times, and he's apparently written a book on it that I want to read. And apparently for the director's cut, one of the biggest changes is the spider walk scene. It's kind of infamous, and apparently Friedkin was the one who cut it from the original movie, and like a gymnast did the actual walk without having to use like a rig. Um, and he apparently cut it because he thought that it happened too early, which I actually think, like, with the way the movie's paced and with how quiet it is at the beginning, I think something like that like makes enough sense to start to get her. I mean, they go to the hypnotist right after that scene, but apparently Mark Kermode found that. He found footage of it when Friedkin was like denying that it like that the scene was ever filmed. So it's funny that like a moment that small, it's only like 5-10 second scene, but it was cut from the original movie and it's in the director's cut. So I want to look up what some of the other changes are, but I definitely want to read Mark Kermode's book because he's talked about this movie a ton, and I know that the movie just sticks with him, and it has something that it says that matters. So
Yeah, I mean, I looked up his channel now, so I'll keep it in mind when I'm looking at the video essays.
he
Yeah,
makes really good videos, by the way. Like he has these just short reviews that he does with
I've
another
seen like
guy.
4 minutes
Yeah,
review. It's interesting. Uh,
yeah. He usually like is pretty quick and concise. You're just like, yeah, like have something you can draw away from. I like those critics that don't like take up too much time. It just kind of like
mm.
tell you what the movie's like and like
Yeah,
give you
sometimes
a
I
lay
have
of the
issues
land.
with smaller reviews. I think that I like YMS, I think fell into the trap of the quickies that just
Yeah.
like were not good at all. But his longer videos were like usually really good. I think he stopped doing the quickies, right? So at least there's that.
Yeah, and he's doing membership stuff like
Yeah,
nowadays. So yeah,
yeah. So which I
it's a
think,
thing.
yeah, is better. So yeah, there's always the risk of these videos not like saying anything, especially when they're trying to be spoiler free and everything. But yeah, interesting. I'll definitely check this channel out. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it's that kind of movie where you're like when you're watching it, you're like, okay, let's see what the hype is. And even though I didn't like give it a
Yeah,
10 out of
yeah.
10, and it wasn't like, whoa, like this is the greatest thing of all time. Um, like I can still like while I was watching it, it was just like I get it. You know what I mean? Like I get it. It's just very well made. It gave me like Shining vibes of just like
Yeah.
everything is so purposeful and it is just like telling such a well told story. And even though it wasn't like my favorite thing ever, I just get it. I just get why people love it, and I understand where how it became like a classic, especially when you like look at how much because it's always interesting, right? Watching these movies that spawned like a whole genre after you've seen all
Yeah.
the knockoffs, but you're watching the original for the first time, your brain needs to adapt to be like, no, it's not that this movie's generic. It's that every movie that came after tried to copy it. Like, try to understand that is very hard sometimes. Um, but it is just like the best version I've seen of this type of story. I don't know. I think the closest that I've seen is Ouija: Origin of Evil, the Mike Flanagan one. But it's
Which
genuine.
like but any like exorcism style story like that takes a page out of
Yeah.
this movie. Like this is like kind of the one that did, like you said, they all like came from it, even the better attempts. So
Mm.
I was mentioning to you that like I compared it to The Shining because I'm like The Shining is like Kubrick didn't do horror. He did all kinds of genres. He did sci-fi and a bunch of other stuff, and it just he didn't really have a genre that he stuck to. I feel like there's a lot of like the people making horror nowadays are people like Oz Perkins or like Ari Aster. They're known for making horror movies, even if like they're like horror movies like have maybe a little more prestige nowadays. Like back in this day with The Shining, that was just like he was just like, yeah, I'll adapt The Shining and just make a book, even though it's not really a good adaptation. But this is similar with this is William Friedkin, and the reason he directed this movie was The French Connection, that won Best Picture, and it the French Connection's like a very gritty, just crime movie. It's just a cop crime movie, and
Mm.
it's very down to earth. And people have like said that these like that Friedkin has like almost a documentary look to his movies, like
Well, I kind of
an
felt
old
that
fashioned, just
like
down to earth. Yeah, look.
Exorcist felt very grounded, which is why when it isn't grounded anymore, by the end, the last 30 minutes with the exorcism and everything, and it looks like fucking ethereal with the fucking backlighting and the smoke and everything. It just
Yeah,
looks
yeah, the
so,
blue.
yeah, looks so beautiful because you're like mesmerized by like, everything has been, because part of the point of the movie we're talking about this is that like they're trying to make it like so everything can be explained in some way by like some logical explanation. It's schizophrenia, it's convulsions, it's whatever. But by the time you get to the end, you see that it is like supernatural, like seeing like this beautiful image of like something that like just looks straight out of like a painting. Like it just makes you think like, shit, yeah, this is like supernatural, this is beyond our human comprehension, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah, the third act is incredible. The
Yeah.
way they put everything together. It's funny because like the I am sure that Exorcist believer will like the exorcism stuff will probably be introduced like within halfway through, and it's not going to use its time well because like it is a solid 30 minutes of the
Yeah.
runtime when
Well,
Marin shows
I
up,
was
which
so it was so funny to me because I was like, okay, so Damien, what's his last name? Karmas?
Karis.
Karras, that's it. Sorry. Karras is gonna be, the exorcist. He's going to be the one to exorcise her. Okay. And then the movie just kept going and he just kept not being involved with the plot for like so long. And I was like, when is he gonna be part of the movie? And the movie takes its time, it builds his character. And you understand him like so much by that point. And it's super interesting. Because when he does meet Chris, they have like this very interesting conversation. Like, did he not tell you about my daughter? No. Oh, the priests can be very secretive, huh? Like, well, depends on the priest. Like, you can see like his lack of
I
like faith in the church by that point. It's so interesting. Like, there's so much character in it, and the movie just builds to that instead of just being like, okay, he's the exorcist. Now let's do the exorcism. You know?
Yeah, and he's skeptical. I love the dialogue in this movie, like genuinely,
Uh-huh.
it's really good. The scene with Karis and the homicide detective when they first encounter, and they're like, oh, like he explains like the camera like pauses on him when they stop walking when he explains that like the guy who fell down the stairs, his head was turned completely around, which obviously like connects later on when Reagan
Mm.
does the same thing. Oh, so much of it, like I said, it reminds me of like noir movies. It's so smooth. I love the dialogue, but yeah, you would think that Karras is going to be the one who saves the day, and he does in the end, and he's part of the exorcism in the third act. But Marin is the actual. In fact, that's the tagline of the movie. Something almost beyond comprehension is happening to a girl on the street in this house, and a man has been sent as a last resort. This man is the exorcist.
Hmm.
and and that is Marin, and it's funny how that works. I love that he just shows up. Like there's that shot that like is in the poster of him just standing in front of the house and like light coming from the window, and then he just comes straight in and like Karis like is like, do you want like background? Do you want like to learn more? And he's like, no, not really. Let's just get right to it. And yeah. And he is a true believer, and you see him at the opening, and you see him like bits of him sprinkled throughout the narrative, but it's they mentioned that he was apparently involved in other exorcisms throughout the world, and that the last one nearly killed him.
Yeah.
And this is a crazy thing. That's Max von Sydow. I don't know if you remember him. He's in the opening of he's in Shutter Island for one, but he's also in the opening of The Force Awakens. And
Oh yeah, it is him.
yeah, he was actually 44 years old when he filmed
Really? I
this.
mean, I
The
could tell the makeup was trying to make him look older. It was kind of funny, but I didn't realize he
yeah,
was that young.
Yeah, the makeup definitely is meant to make him look older, and it's funny when you look at him in like Game of Thrones or the Force Awakens. They did a pretty damn good job in
Mm,
terms of like how he actually aged. So it's pretty cool stuff, and he gives a really good performance, even
he
though he has
does.
limited runtime.
Yeah, no, he's really good. And I love, I don't know, the movie has this kind of thing of just like everyone is kind of like flawed in their own ways, and I kind of like he has his drugs, whatever it is that he takes to stop his shaking. He takes it at the beginning and then he takes just before he dies again. And it's just like it's just a neat moment to see like taking it and trying to like compose himself, get back into it, but like seeing like how fallible they are, even though they're like supposed to be like tools of God. You know what I mean? I like that
Yeah. Well,
because like
and I
Karis
love
obviously
that
is a very flawed human. So yeah,
Well, yeah, and I love that they do that with Karis. It's a funny thing about this movie. It's not like the Catholic Church is here to save the day, and like if only they'd have faith, they'd see that like their daughter was like possessed. It's like it's not a story that's like that. The priests in this movie are flawed characters, and they ground them and just make them human. They don't act like the Catholic Church has some magic wand. In fact, that's what the doctor says to her. It's like they keep it in the closet as like somewhat of an embarrassment, but it's been known to work. And it's I love that they treat the priests that way, that they humanize them and give them flaws as characters. It's why I think this movie genuinely is a good faith exploration. You could see this like I know that like a lot of like religious people like again with the whole like evil or cursed movie, it's like this movie's unholy, like you can't watch this movie. I'm like, it is a film about faith and about religion in part. It's not what the entire story is, obviously, but like it's definitely baked in thematically. And I'm like, I I wish more Christian people would give this a shot. Just like movies like Silence or First Reformed. I'm like, Chris,
well, it is
the
interesting,
best Christian
right?
movies aren't made by Christians.
Well, yeah, I was about to say that because you said that when we watched Midnight Mass, and the whole thing with Midnight
Yeah,
Mass is
yeah.
that Mike Flanagan, used to be religious, but isn't anymore. And I think that show is like the best exploration of faith and alcoholism
I
I've seen
do
everywhere.
too.
It's kind of insane how good that is.
Watch Midnight Mass, people.
Yeah.
It's so good.
We'll probably end up covering it at some point as well. I recommend that we can rewatch because yeah, it's one of my favorite shows of all time, and it is crazy. I think like I don't know. It's interesting because there's all these like unholy things, but usually the most like faithful stories like this are the ones that understand like the place that faith has within the world, even though they don't believe in it. They understand like the purpose of it really well, and I think Mike Flanagan does really well, and I think this movie does really well as well. Like how much it can help Karis, even though he's like rejecting it because he can't see like the good in the world anymore. It's interesting. I don't know.
Well, I always laugh because the George R. R. Martin writes faith really well, and he's a straight up atheist, and like, but he in A Song of Ice and Fire, like there are so many characters that are faithful, and it's an important thing in like the stories themselves because faith is important, even if you don't believe in God or believe that there's like anything supernatural or spiritual to the world. Like I think most can agree that faith is an important thing for people to have,
Yeah.
and it's just that's what this movie is. Like that's what I always look at with Karis. Like I feel like I've lost my faith, and the movie is a story about him getting it back in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Regaining his faith and doing the right thing with it. It's very interesting. I don't know, man. It's just I love it when I watch one of these classics and I'm just like, yep, I get it. I know you're not like you don't think like Citizen Kane is it's so
We'll
funny.
get there. I've only
Yeah.
seen it once.
Yeah, it's so funny because I was like, you don't think Citizen Kane is, and I was like thinking, how am I gonna describe it? And I was like, oh, Citizen Kane, because that's the way we talk about like the best movie ever. We say, oh, that isn't any
Exactly.
Citizen Kane. So that was just like my brain almost like said, you don't think Citizen Kane is Citizen Kane? But you know, I think like that was one of those movies where I watch. I'm like, okay, this is like I get it. The Shining is one of those. You know, I like when I watch these classics. I'm just like, I get it. You know, Blade Runner. I rewatched that recently as well. Yeah, there's some movies where you just get
Yeah,
where the hype comes from.
get where the hype comes from, maybe like aren't floored by it. I mean,
Yeah,
you expect to be floored when you watch The Exorcist
yeah,
finally, but it's like you watch it, you're like, yeah, that was a great film.
yeah.
That's,
Yeah,
kind of
it's
the way
kind
it
of what
works.
I like because obviously we're going in with like unreasonable expectations, right? Watching it like 52 years after it came out, after it was like the biggest fucking thing of all time when it came out. So we're always gonna like think the movie's gonna like have to be the best thing ever, and it's not going to be. But I like when I watch these things, and I'm like, because it's I think different to Rear Window. When we watched it, I was like, that was fine. Like you know, it didn't. But the movie The Exorcist was like winning me back as I was watching it because I was like, yeah, this is not the greatest thing ever, and I don't get like why it became this huge thing like in terms of like you know uh the like going to the theaters to watch it and you know the whole culture around it at the time, but I understand its impact like later on in terms of like filmmaking in general and just you know what it meant for horror. Like you can kind of get it because it's just a really well made film. Like it's not what you expect when you see like, oh, this is the greatest film of all time. You expect like to be like see these amazing effects throughout an entire like 90-minute runtime, and you know, but the movie's like way more character focused than that, and it's way more interesting than just being like, whoa, amazing effects. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not like trying to be like a modern horror movie. It is like from the 70s, so it has its very particular 70s style. So it's nice when I watch a movie like that. I'm like, okay, this is not the greatest thing ever, but it did win me back as time went on. So yeah, I don't know. I very much recommend it. Really, really liked it.
Yeah, I do as well. This was you were saying that like this wasn't like a 10 out of 10 wow you experience. Like this was the I think I gave it a 9 before, and I think the reason was that like pacing, I found the movie, the dead air worked in this movie for me like this time around. And I'm not sure if I've seen the theatrical cut. I'd love to see the theatrical and the directors to see what differences there are. But I honestly don't think this movie really has pacing issues. I think
Yeah,
it's really efficient with its time. And this time around, I'm like, yeah, this is the 10 out of 10
yeah,
watch. I
yeah.
love this movie and I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's the kind of film where I don't even know if I could find any flaw. Like, you know, I didn't give it like a 10 out of 10 because it's just like, you know, I didn't enjoy it on that level. I'm not gonna put it on the level
Yeah.
of, you know, Blade Runner, for example. But it is the kind of movie that is just like hard to find flaws. It's just really well made. So yeah, very, very, very happy I recommended that for the podcast. I will do more of like classic horror stuff because I have a huge backlog. I think I mentioned in the previous episode that I have like that Mike Flanagan made a list of like his favorite horror of all time.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like it goes back to like the 1920s. So there's plenty of horror movies that I added to my watch list from that list. So I will go through that. It'll be interesting.
I definitely like I'm sure you could see like the influence. In fact, I almost pictured this movie like how it would be in like a Netflix series that Flanagan made because it has some of that vibe. We were with how character oriented it
Yeah.
is. Of like if he had made this, like you'd imagine it would be something where they like spaced episodes out and
Yeah.
like some of the individual scares might have been like episode cappers or something like
Yeah.
that. But I you can tell he took a page out of this story, especially with how character oriented and quiet it is.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, like I said, Ouija Origin of Evil is a movie that feels like
Yeah,
it's similar to this, which is a good movie. I recommend it too. It's probably the closest I've seen of like getting to this to you know this level of like how you do an Exorcist movie because I think most attempts are like very flawed. I think Mike Flanagan explores faith in that movie fairly well. Though it is not
yeah.
the type of movie like
Ironic.
that has as much to say as the you know average Mike Flanagan movie that usually is very like substantive with like
Yeah,
saying a
yeah.
lot.
Little bit more of just kind of a thrill ride. I mean, it's a sequel to another horror
Yeah,
movie anyway. It's a
yeah,
little ironic, actually. There's an Ouija board in this movie too.
yeah. It was so funny when I saw that. Um, all right. Well, Evan, it is your turn to recommend something.
It is my turn. I'm gonna keep up the old-fashioned movie thing we got going on right now, and recommend an older movie that's tangentially related because Max von Sydow is in that. It
Mm.
is probably his most iconic role, Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal.
Oh, hell yeah.
Have
Okay.
you heard of that?
I've heard of it. I've not watched it. I'm okay.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
I I have not watched it either, and I know only of imagery, which you're probably familiar with as well, but the premise of the movie is so amazing, and I'm like, I hope this is as good as its premise because it's one hell of a premise.
Yeah, all right. I'm down. I we're just gonna end up going through our watch list with this podcast, and I'm all for it. Because like there's so many classic movies we need to watch and so many, newer ones as well, so it'll be fun. All right.
Well, and another one that neither of us have seen. We'll
Yeah.
see how that works. Sometimes it
Yeah,
turns
sometimes that
roll the
beats for
dice.
like very short episodes, but I mean this episode went on fairly like what 30 yeah 36 minutes just now hit for a movie I hadn't seen before, so I guess my recommendation worked out. So it always depends. All right.
We'll probably have a decent bit.
Yeah. All right, folks. Thank you for watching. You very much recommend watching The Exorcist. And we'll catch you next week for the seventh seal.
Catch you later.
Bye bye.
Bye.